Returning now to our earlier story about a South Auckland family, including a severely disabled boy living in a garage because of a lack of suitable state housing. Mum Maria and her 2 children have been camped out in a relative's garage for 6 months. Her 7-year-old son has cerebral palsy and relies heavily on a wheelchair, and her daughter has epilepsy. They sleep 3 to a double bed, and there are 4 generations of whānau using the attached granny flat. The family's on the housing waiting list, but MSD has had to apologise to Maria after directing her to properties that are not wheelchair friendly. Since Checkpoint got involved, the family has been reassessed and their priority rating has gone up 4 spots. So how well is social housing catering for people with disabilities? The Associate Housing Minister Kris Faafoi has responsibility for public housing, and he joins us now from our parliamentary studio in Wellington. Good evening, Minister. Thanks for being with us.
Hi, Lisa.
Just to start off with, can we agree with what garages are for and what they are not for?
Well, obviously, I think we've got to make sure we have as many New Zealanders as we possibly can living in conditions that are good, and any parent who is dealing with 2 children who have either a disability or conditions in this case, we would prefer not in there, and that's why an apology has been made, which is the right thing to do. And MSD will be in touch with the family tomorrow to try and expedite the efforts to try and make sure that they can find an appropriate place for them to live. Obviously,
we've drawn this to your attention. What do you think of the situation they are in, and whether enough has been done for them so far?
Well, I would have liked to have them not to have been through the experiences of being offered 2 places that aren't suitable, and an apology has been made for that, as you've said. But again, I would say a mother in the situation that she's in, with 2 very young children with the conditions that they're in, shouldn't be living in a garage, and that's why MSD will be speaking to them tomorrow with the assistance of a housing navigator to make sure we can expedite the efforts to find them a suitable property.
So how many houses do we have in stock that are accessible?
So there are 65,000 kāinga order properties, Lisa. I'm told that about 4,000 of those have been modified in some way, shape or form to make sure that the people living in them can do so because they might have disabilities. That can range from anything like widening the hallways in order to allow wheelchairs to move freely around the property, or a wet bathroom with rails and easily accessible. So there are 4,000 within that.
Okay.
And also a target has been set for the new homes that we are building as part of the public housing building program of 15% of homes that have universal design principles, which essentially mean that they'll be accessible for people with disabilities.
But modified housing is different from fully accessible housing. It could just be a handrail. That counts as modification.
So
do we know how many of that group are actually fully accessible?
No, I don't know that, but I know that...
Do they keep that information?
No, they don't, but they will be. They are going to start collecting that as of August. I don't know the answers behind that, but we have been asking questions about accessibility for some time. There are 65,000 properties, as I mentioned, Lisa, so it would take some time to get through them. But I understand as of August, new data will come through, so we'll have better understanding of what the accessibility issues are, or what types of accessibility we have for some of those properties around the country.
When you talk about a 15% target for the new construction, that's 15% of them, 2,000 houses? So only about 300 properties.
Yeah, that's of the building houses as of, I think it's 2021. So I think it's going to be more than that. But again, I realise there's huge demand for properties with accessibility features. I spoke to Dave Matthews from CCS about this about a couple of months ago, and we are acute to the issues around demand to make sure that we can do our best around the new houses that are being built, and continuing to do what we've done for some time about making specific modifications for people who are on either the waiting list or being asked to be transferred to a different kāinga order property because of accessibility issues.
And how many are there of those people who are on the list looking for a modified property or are transferred to a modified property?
So the March number that we had was 930 out of the just a little over 19,000 people who are either on the waiting list or on a list for transfer from one KO property to the other. I put a caveat on that. We think that's underreporting because there are instances that we know of, and I've seen this as a local MP as well, where someone might have an accessibility issue, but they don't necessarily flag that at the time when they apply or ask for a transfer, because they think that might affect their chances of getting a property sooner. So there are many things that we can do, getting good information from those who apply, but also making sure that we're being vigilant and looking for every opportunity to supply a property that is either built to a design standard, or if it's already existing, and we're talking more about properties that are on flat land and flat properties themselves, that we are helping to make sure we can make changes to those properties that suit the needs of the clients that are asking for an accessible property.
Are we letting our most vulnerable people down here? Because Maria's story isn't the first one like this, and you know this. We came to you about another one similar. So are these people being let down?
Look, I wouldn't say that. We are trying to make sure that, because I think there's also a way in which we are dealing with these people, and as I say, we're asking for more to be done to find a suitable property. It is a challenge making sure we can find a property for those with disabilities, and the waiting list is long. But I would hope when someone presents themselves as they have in this case, with yet 2 young children with pretty serious illnesses, we go above and beyond to make sure that they're in a suitable property.
That didn't happen because...
And Lisa, that's why there has been an apology, and why I've come here tonight to say that we want more to be done to ensure that this family is looked after, and the efforts are made to expedite making sure they can get into an appropriate property.
Understood.
And we'll be sending a message to the system as a whole that when a case like this is presented, we've got to do better.
Can we check back with you then after they have the conversation with the family to see if you've managed to resolve the situation?
I would hope that the people who are going to speak to them have got the message that we've got to do better, and that's why they'll get a call from MSD tomorrow, and a housing navigator will sit down with this family to expedite the efforts to get them into an appropriate property.
Appreciate your time this evening. That's the Associate Housing Minister Kris Faafoi, who was joining us live from our parliamentary studio in Wellington.